Understand, ain't nobody blaming you for what your ancestors did. But you gotta understand how some people that were affected by it were devastated. Spiritually, culturally, they were devastated. And some people don't get over it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience growing up in Sacramento? This actually isn't your first time at the Crocker, is it?
No, it's not. I was born here, and the first memory I have is in Del Paso Heights. That's where we lived. My mother had bought a lot in Del Paso Heights, and then she bought a boxcar for $200. And she had it moved to her lot, and she put some cement blocks underneath it so it would stand up, and had a door and some windows cut in the boxcar. And that was a house. And there was a porch. They'd built a porch out there, and that was the first house that I ever knew. It was a boxcar. Then after that, we moved to the projects. She sold the lot, and we moved to Stevie Circle, which is, I think it's down that way, down towards, well, it's south of here, off 5th Street. That's where I grew up. And then when I started going to school, I was going to Lincoln Junior High School, which is right around the corner, across the street from the Crocker. And I never knew what a museum was. I'd never seen a museum. I never heard of a museum. So at lunchtime, we would always take a break and we'd go off campus, off Lincoln, and we'd cross the street. And we'd go down to the Crocker and hop the fence. They had a fence out there. And we'd jump over the fence and we'd play hide and go seek and jailbreak and tag and all that kind of stuff. And we running around, running through the bushes, tearing up people's bushes and all that kind of stuff. And one day, somebody said, let's go inside the museum because the guy that guards the door is gone. So we all ran in and we running. And I ran in and I'm running, and all of a sudden I looked up and I saw this great big old painting, and I stopped and I couldn't move. And I'm looking at the painting and I'm saying, oh my God, look at this. I couldn't believe it. And the guy said, come on, Mark, come on. We gotta go, he's gonna catch us. And I'm in a daze. I was like mesmerized by this painting, and I'm trying to figure out, how does anybody paint like this? I couldn't believe it. So I got caught and I got kicked out. But all while he was taking me out, I'm still looking at the paintings because I couldn't believe it. And now every day at lunchtime, I would go over and see if I could sneak into the museum because I was so fascinated by all the paintings that they had in this Crocker Art Museum. And if I got the chance, I would stand there and I would just study them, because I would look at the colors and how they took the colors and blended them. I couldn't understand how they blended the colors with a paintbrush, and I was just fascinated. And one day I said, you know what, I'm tired of this guy catching me and throwing me out every day, so I'm gonna have to get me some money so I can pay to get in. So I went upstairs, I went in my mother's purse, and usually I would steal a dime or something to get something to eat, but this time I got a dime and a quarter. I was gonna use that quarter to get in the Crocker. So I went to school, and lunchtime came, and I went over to the Crocker with my quarter, and I walked in and I paid my quarter, and I walked in, and I'm not trying to run now because I paid my way in, so I figured I could look at everything. And I'm standing there looking at these paintings and studying them and everything, and next thing I know, somebody grabbed me by the shoulder. Oh, come on here. I said, oh my God. I said, I paid. I'm yelling, I paid. He took me out and kicked me out anyway. And I was so hurt, I sat on the steps and I cried. I just sat on the steps of the Crocker and I cried. I would hope that people just come to embrace a better understanding of history. And that is history of everybody, and understand the humanity in people and how we are all humans. And sometimes we make mistakes and we do things that are not right, but you have to say, you know, forgive me for what I've done. I'm not gonna do that no more. But some people don't even know that the stuff they do that's bad, some people don't even realize that's wrong, because that's the way they grew up. People in this country grew up and Africans were slaves. And African people in this country were treated a certain way. And they thought that's just the way you're supposed to treat them. What happened is so many people have a superiority complex in this country. They're not going to admit anything, and that's why I call it the shame, the greatest shame, because a lot of people are so ashamed. They don't want to look at that shame because they know it did, and they all quick to say, well, I didn't have nothing to do with that. Well, I know you didn't, but your ancestors did. And it's not like I'm blaming you for what your ancestors did. That's not the point. I just think you should understand and realize that some of the ideas that your ancestors passed on to you, you still have them. And one of them is that some people are superior and other people are inferior. I'm positive that it can, but people have to have the courage to look it in the eye and deal with it. I mean, it might not make you feel too good, but the people that are alive today understand that they weren't responsible for it, they didn't do it. But if your ancestors did, understand ain't nobody blaming you for what your ancestors did. But you gotta understand how some people that were affected by it were devastated. Spiritually, culturally, they were devastated. And some people don't get over it. Like I was trying to say about football, they're just getting over the quarterback thing. You know, now you got, after Doug Williams went to the Super Bowl and broke every record they had, and he was a backup quarterback. I forget the year, but now you got all kind of black quarterbacks on the football field. Now I've never seen that. And what it does to somebody that's in their 70s like me, I sit there and I was telling my grandson, you know, because he don't know, he thinks that everything is normal. I said, no, I said, back when I was growing up, couldn't nobody of color play quarterback. You couldn't be a quarterback because they felt like black people don't have the intelligence to be quarterbacks. And people still carry that with them. You know, they still carry those kind of things. I think we have to come to a point where we realize that the slavery that we had, when I say racism ruled its application, that's what I mean. You had to convince people to be racist toward other people before slavery could happen. And some people didn't go for it, and they fought against it. Even the Crocker family here were abolitionists. I was reading some stuff downstairs about the Crocker family, and you know, I didn't really know that. They were abolitionists and they fought against slavery, and I think that's something that people should know about. You know, there's a sculpture down there of a slave auction, and it belonged to the Crocker's collection, and they talk about that. And I think that's something that we should understand, that there were a lot of people that fought against slavery. They were abolitionists, and they fought hard against slavery. And people need to recognize that and bring it up. And I look at that and I think about, well, damn, you know, and finally I got an exhibit here at the Crocker. And that's a miracle, because I never thought I would ever have an exhibit at this museum. I never thought that. That's something that doesn't even seem real. I never thought I would ever see an African American elected as president of this country. But I've seen it. But that doesn't mean that things have changed. All that means is that we're moving in the right direction. That's all it means. We still have a whole lot of work to do.